Hi, I'm Michael Burke, and welcome to Pathways of Hope. With me today and always is,
Chan Hellman, professor at the University of Oklahoma and director of the Hope Research Center.
and Chen is the lead hope theorist in the country. He's been measuring and researching hope for how many years now?
12 years. 12
12 years.
years.
And
Yeah.
hope can be measured, huh?
Hope can be measured. It's probably worth taking just a minute to, if you don't mind, to tell where I actually stumbled onto this concept of hope, because I'm a quantitative psychologist, and which means my doctoral training was in statistics and research methods. Um, and I was actually doing an evaluation of an agency that provides services to individuals living with HIV and AIDS. And I was introduced to a young man named David, and he had just turned 19 years old. 3 months prior to he and I having a conversation, he was diagnosed as HIV positive. And as he's telling me this story, I'm looking for and listening for depression and anxiety, which he's not displaying at all. And so going on with our conversation, he tells me that a couple weeks prior, he had disclosed to his parents and they'd kicked him out of the house, and he was currently homeless here in Tulsa. And of course, I'm immediately thinking of all of the things that should be wrong with him. And David started talking about his future, and he started talking about his future goals and going to the local community college. He had his major picked out. He had an appointment with a career counselor. And it just struck me that I had been trained my entire professional life to trying to understand what's wrong with people, when in fact what I should have been focused on is what's right with people. And that's when I discovered, or actually David shared with me, this idea of hope.
I love it. So what's the origin? How did you realize you can measure hope?
So, as a quantitative psychologist, I do firmly believe, this will sound like a joke, but it's actually true. I do believe I can measure anything. Um, and so it turns out that people have been studying hope for quite a long time and measuring it for a little over 30 years now. And so we've got an adult self-report scale that we use, and there's also one for children that it's valid for children ages 7 and above. So we can measure hope and measure it quite well.
And then the science of hope, if a child increases 2 points in hope scores, that's one letter grade?
That's right. That's right. The research is pretty clear and consistent on if you can increase a child's hope score by 2 points. And that doesn't mean taking a child from low hope to high hope. That's literally moving the needle by 2 points. Will predict the letter grade change in the classroom.
Well, I personally have seen through my work with Camp Hope America kids who started the week thinking that 14-year-old boy specifically thinking by the time he was 18 he'd be dead or in jail because of the life choices he was making and the situations he was in, whereas we taught him hope and we fostered hope throughout the week, and by the end of the week he wanted to come back and be a camp counselor. So you talk about a change in hope, and that boy got out of the lifestyle during that campfire the final night. I remember him in a big huddle with people all around him crying, saying, we have to be different. We have to change our lives. This young man is working on cell phone tower poles now. And he's never been back to juvenile hall. He's not been back in jail, and he's made a different life because somebody invested in him and saw him for who he was and saw what was right with him and not what was wrong with him. So I really appreciate that. Can you take us through the science of hope?
Yeah, so hope is the belief that the future will be better than today, and that you have the power to make it so. So the young man that you were referring to saw a different future than the one that he had been experiencing or expecting. And, he recognized in that moment or across time that he actually had the ability, the pathways, and the willpower or agency to pursue the goals that he had in life. And, as we've talked about before, over 2,000 published studies scientific studies show very consistently that hope is the single best predictor of well-being for both children and adults.
That's amazing. And it's all measurable. It's all science. It's not just because I think it. You know, we
That's
talked
right.
last
Yeah.
time that a goal without a pathway is just a wish. It's not because I wish that hope meant something. And I listen to hope different when the president talks about he hopes this ends, or when I hear people say, I hope you have a nice day, or I hope, I hope, I hope. I always hear in my head now, because of you, in a good way, agency pathway. Do they have goal agency pathway? Is it actually a wish, or is it just is it actually that you really hope? And a lot of people use the word hope in their work, in their lives, in their day-to-day interaction. But I do know that you've taught me that there's 4 pillars to hope descending, and really 4 pillars to hope increasing. So I know you got your screen ready to share, and maybe explain that, how hope works.
Sure. Yeah. So let me pull up that slide real quick. And there we go. So you're right. The loss of hope is actually a process, and when our goals are blocked, we experience an emotional reaction. Just so everybody knows, emotion is an outcome of hope. Hope is not a feeling. Hope is a way of thinking. Um, and so sometimes we'll experience this blocked goal, and our anger or even our rage will help us get through that blockage. But if that goal remains significantly blocked and we're not able to find another pathway, then we can find ourselves falling into despair. And in this case, what I like for people to think about is where do you see desperation in your community or in your own life? Because when we begin to experience despair, our time framework becomes very urgent. Whatever is going to happen has to happen now. And when we're in despair, we oftentimes can find ourselves in very dysfunctional pathways to achieving those goals that can actually get us or others into trouble. The final stage in the loss of hope is actually apathy. And apathy is the opposite of hope. And apathy exists when no matter what I do, I cannot achieve the goal that I set. No matter uh, how hard I try, it doesn't matter. The outcome has already been decided. I will fail. So why try? And this is where you just stop caring. And a lot of the work that I do in domestic violence and child maltreatment and homelessness and extreme poverty and other adversities, this is a lot of the work that's going on in our communities, organizations such as yours, that are working with parents and kids in despair and showing them the future can be better and that they have a role to play in that.
And
So
I
this
think
is the process. Yeah,
the
sorry.
difference between despair and apathy, if I understand it right, is like if we look at the homeless situation that's rampant across the country, and a lot of movies that I've seen, documentaries, and a lot of people I've talked to that are homeless, a lot of them are in despair because they still get up every morning. They still believe they can get out of the situation that they're in, but they don't have agency or pathway. So it's not that one of them's blocked, it's both of them are blocked, but they still have this thought that I can do this. And that's where we foster them through that thought, right?
Well, that is right. And so, when we think about somebody walking through the front door of a healthcare provider or an agency such as yours, it's this idea that um, that there is this belief that the future can be better, and it is through others, perhaps, and others' generosity that our futures have a possibility. There's a famous quote by Professor Saliba, and it is, "Sometimes we have to lend hope to others until they can find it for themselves." And I just love
That's
that
great.
quote. Yeah.
So if we take this current COVID-19 situation and you look at this graph here, a lot of us are angry where we want to be out, we want to be doing our normal thing, but our agency is blocked or our pathway is blocked to get there. A lot of us are in despair where we know it'll end, but we don't know how or when. Or and there's people who have lost the motivation and just kind of given up, but we can't really do that right now. We have to hold tight because it's for the wealth and health, wealth, sorry, health and well-being of all of our community,
That's
right?
right. That's right. That's right. And you know, the good news is, Mike, is that even if those around us or somebody around us is experiencing despair or apathy, we know how to turn that around. There are strategies that exist that can lead us out of uh, despair and hopelessness.
Can you show us what those are?
Sure. So basically, it is a process that starts with goal setting. And I will tell you this, that when you're working with somebody in despair or apathy, goal setting can be a very difficult, slow process. I don't expect this to be a 5-minute conversation, but trying to understand what their goals are becomes quite critical. And I think it's important for all of us to know that when we're working with somebody who, let's say as an example, somebody who's homeless, when we're working with them in goal setting, we need to pay attention to what their goals are, not our goals for them. That may come a little bit later. But if we just start with what did they hope to achieve, and it may be that it's what do you hope to achieve this week? Um, Once you can start to get towards understanding the goal that they desire, you'll start to see that agency or that energy
Mm.
show up. And it's when that energy shows up that we can begin to focus on those pathways. And when we talk about pathways, you know, what we want to be able to do is hopefully be able to identify one or two or more pathways and be able to walk through those pathways together. What are the possible barriers? Are there ways to overcome those barriers so that we can choose a pathway strategy that has the best opportunity for success? And then this third phase is probably my favorite, and that is this idea of creating future memories of success. So, for instance, if parents are at home with their children during this time, you know, walk through goal setting with the child. Once you identify some of the pathways, then take a moment and have that child spend significant amount of time describing and imagining what success is going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to smell like, and who all will be impacted by this goal for those around them. Because it is when we begin to create future memories of success that we really enhance hope. That is the belief that the future can be better than today and that I have the power to make it so.
And I love what you said about it can't be my goal as a caregiver. It can't be my goal as a parent or my goal as a social worker or doctor or care provider or educator. It's got to be their goal.
That's right. That is absolutely right. You know, so often I think some of the people that we work with have spent their life being held to other people's goals, and with such a repeated history of failure, it's easy to imagine people being apathetic when faced with a new goal.
It's such a strength-based approach. It's such a strength, positive, forward-thinking approach. I've been involved with a lot of work around developmental assets, and I've seen a lot of things that we can plug into the system: triple P, safe care, 5 protective factors, and all of that. But this is really about what the essence of hope is. I believe my future is brighter than my past, and I take a role in making it happen. It really does. If you don't listen to those I's and my's, then you're going to lose the point of really having a successful interaction with somebody.
That's right. That's right. Oftentimes, what I do is I'll listen to, like, if you and I are having a conversation, what I'm listening for are goal statements, pathway statements, and willpower or agency statements so that I can say, where do we need to enhance? Where do we need to model? hope? Where do we need to find hope? Is it in goal setting? Is it in pathways? Is it problem solving? What motivates you? What's your why? What gets you through the day?
Well, thank you, Chan. We're out of time for this segment, but I think this was a great introduction to the whole process of what hope is and what it means. So we'll look forward to talking again next time on our podcast that we've created called Pathways of Hope. I'm Michael Burke.
And I'm Chan Hellman.
Thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you next time.